Hey guys, I'm ready.
Yes, sir, I have started the webinar.
So I'm ready.
Sure, sir.
Bolo. Chepatandi. వచ్చిందా చెప్పలో ఇట్లా రబ్ చేసుకుని వాసన చూసుకోండి. ఏమైనా నోస్ అవి లేకపోతే క్లియర్ అవుతుంది. తర్వాత గురుకున్న వాళ్ళకి గురకు తగ్గిపోతుంది. రాత్రి కమ్మగా పడుకోవచ్చు. చూసుకోండి ఒక చేత్తో. దాని తర్వాత ఆ చేయి కూడా పెట్టండి. ఇదిగో మీరు తీసుకోండి. ఏ నా దగ్గర శాంపుల్ అవన్నీ ఆయనే ఇచ్చాడు.
మామూలుగా మౌస్ బ్లాక్ చేసి అయితే దొరుకున్న వాళ్ళకి వస్తుంది. ఓన్లీ ఇది దానికోసమే సార్.
అట్లా చాలా ఉన్నాయి. జుట్టు ఫాలింగ్ హెయిర్ కి ఇంకోటి ఉంది, కావాలా?
అంటే పెట్టుకుంటే సార్ మధ్యలో
పోతుంటే ఇది వాడండి. కైగరియా హెయిర్ ఆయిల్ తీసుకెళ్ళండి.
ఇంకొందా సార్ మీరు
చూడండి.
ఓకే సార్. ఇంకోటి
చూడండి.
అయ్యో చాలా ఉన్నది. ఇది ఆయిల్ పెట్టుకోవాలి.
రాసుకోండి. దాని మీద ఇన్స్ట్రక్షన్ ఉంటుంది. హే రోహిత్.
Yes, sir. We will start in 30 seconds.
Okay, I'm ready. It will be a very informal chat here. उनको बता दो.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure, sure. We'll start. I see people still joining in, so I'm just giving them a minute to join.
నేను వెళ్ళిపోతున్నా 12:30.
మళ్ళీ ఈరోజు రారా సార్? ఓకే, నేను తీసుకున్నాను. 5 minutes తీసుకున్నాను.
Yes, Rohit.
Sure, sir. We can get started. Okay, thank you. So, greetings for a wonderful Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar under UForum 2.0 series, and 11th such webinar under UForum, right? So, I hope you all can hear me loud and clear. Okay, I hope you can. So I am Rohit. I'm part of PGP 2013 and 15 batch of IIM Udaipur. I will be moderating this webinar today, and we will be discussing an extremely time-sensitive topic around climate change mitigation, what each of us must understand. We have with us today Professor D.V.R. Seshadri. I think most of us know him, and I was fortunate enough to sit in his B2B market management class. I still have the course material from his class, which happened during exactly this time frame, September-October timeline, 7 years back. So such is his influence on my life. So just to do a formal introduction, Professor D.V.R. is an IIT Madras, University of California and IIM Ahmedabad alumni. Since 2000 until joining ISB in 2016 as a full-time professor of business marketing, D.V.R. sir has taught in various IIMs including Ahmedabad, Bangalore, and Udaipur. So, and 15 years prior to his academic engagements, before 2000, he worked in a variety of public sector companies, family businesses, entrepreneurial startups, spanning across industry. His areas of interest include B2B marketing, innovation, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. He has also co-authored multiple management books, including one titled "Global Risk and Global Opportunity," which is taught across Management Institute. So welcome, D.V.R. sir. Thank you so much for giving us 1 hour from extremely busy schedule.
So thank you, friends. Can you hear me, Rohit?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful to meet you all, and many of you might have sat in my class, so it's a privilege. It's like homecoming for me. And based on my chat with Rohit and Ruchi, I thought we'll just have a informal chat on something that concerns humanity and its future. All of us are aware of this. Every year it gets even more intense the problem. This year we had flooding in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra, and then we had floods in Germany and large parts of Europe, Belgium, and such places. China had floods. Siberia, which is supposed to be ice cold, had forest fires. Australia, forest fires. And the list is endless. California, forest fires. US floods in New York area. So this cannot be freak. I mean, in the past, we used to have one or two stray incidents once in 3-4 years in one part of the world. But today it is almost predictable like clockwork that you will be damn sure every country will get impacted. The other thing which is worth thinking about is the Saudi Arabia and Oman had snowfall. So what the hell is happening if you ask? There is something terribly wrong. Now one can sit back and cry and say that kuch nahi kar sakte hain. This is the retribution of the divinity or God for all the past pap or sins of humanity. But that's one thing, of course, while that may be true, what can we do about it in an individual capacity, in our collective family level, also in the company where we work? Can we sensitize people about these perils and in our own small way contribute to it? So that's the purpose of this presentation. And I will spend about half an hour walking you through this so that we have a context to talk. I'm sure that this topic, while you are all aware of its importance, you may not be fully tuned to the realities of what is happening. I must compliment two of my colleagues, Sanjana Gurti and Ahana Mahanti. I hope one or both of them are on the call. I don't know if they can identify themselves, but probably not. But yeah, both of them are doing research in this area, in the center that I'm involved with. And they are aspirational PhD students in climate change. They do brilliant work. Sanjana is based in Mumbai and Ahana is part of ISB. Okay, without further ado, this picture tells it all, friends. Doesn't need too many explanations. Melting of snow on the top left, forest fires, and then there is these hurricanes which come at sickening frequency, road closures, and so on. So how am I going to spend the next about 30 minutes understanding what is sustainability? Very, very brief. Climate change crisis, 21st century thinking with the donut model. Plastic pollution, something which we can directly contribute to avoiding by simply carrying a cloth bag with us and also sensitizing the people around you, your dorm mates, hostel mates in IIMU, or if you're already working, your society people, you can influence and say, let's stop it. Like, for example, at ISB, we had a lot of plastic pollution for the liners for garbage cans. And then I went to that operations people and said, why can't we have biodegradable plastic? There's actually a polymer which on the print of it, you can see I am not a plastic. So these type of small changes we can make, so at least contribute in a positive way. Also, stop drinking Bisleri water. Carry a bottle like this. This has traveled with me 1 million kilometers across the world. It's almost 15 years old. And I have another bottle. So these two take me through my life. There are probably less than 7 or 8 plastic bottles I've used in my life when I didn't carry these or before I was sensitized to this problem. Then circular economy for managing waste, we'll take a look at it. What is this concept of net zero that the world is talking about? And as we speak, there is going to be the IPCC Glasgow meet, which Boris Johnson has been making a big deal of making the right noises that UK is going to herald a new climate change regime and mitigation regime and so on. So the whole world is gravitating to Glasgow in the next 2 months. And then what do green companies do? It's a deep-rooted problem beyond what we see. If you ask most people what is climate change, they'll say, well, shut down industry, shut down power plant, shut down automobile pollution, this and that. That may well be true, but there's a much deeper-rooted problem that I want to spend a fair amount of time on, and then making sustainability personal. Because you might say, well, I'm a small cog in a huge, gigantic wheel. What do I do at a personal level? So this is the coverage. And as we speak, I've structured a course called Marketing for a Sustainable Planet at ISB, because I think that's the most important contribution I can do. So things like B2B marketing, which I'm sort of leaving behind. Okay. What is sustainability? Integration of environmental, health, social equity, and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse, and resilient communities for this generation and generations to come. This says it all. So the environment has to be healthy. There has to be equity. If it is unequitable, what do we mean by equity? You can't have 99% of the wealth in the hands of 1% of the people or 0.1% of the population in any country or the world and expect calm. There will be things like terrorism, there will be naxalism, there will be people coming to the streets because of deprivation, and at a small trigger which may be unrelated, they'll just burn buses, railway stations, metro stations, and so on. So there has to be social equity and economic vitality. I mean, with the population being what it is, about 8 billion heading to 10 billion in the next 2 decades, if there's no economic vitality, you're going to have Afghanistan type situation everywhere. So these three are essential. Without the environment being healthy, we are not going to be around. So, what is the purpose? To create thriving, healthy, diverse, and resilient communities, not just for us, but for future generations. Okay, so this is a UCLA nice definition. Climate change, I will go through fast. If you have some comments, you can just flag them, and through Rohit or whichever way, we can have a discussion. Of the top 100 economies in the world, 51 are corporations. So the biggest polluters are the corporations. Then top 500 million people responsible for half the carbon dioxide emission in the world. You can see how inequitable it is. That is 1 by 16 or 5% of the people or 6% of the people are essentially contributing to half the fossil fuel-based CO2 emissions through their reckless habits and so on. Rate of increase in CO2 in the atmosphere is 60 times faster than at any time in the past 65,000 years. Earth has already experienced a 0.8 degree rise in temperature over the past 200 years. And this is a way, you might say, well, even in Udaipur, the temperature fluctuates between, say, 2 degrees in peak winter to, 50 degrees in peak summer, and on a given day, it might go from 2 degrees to 20 degrees. But that is different. This Earth's temperature is measured in a very, very elaborate way, where you look at long-term trends and you take data points across different parts of the world at different times, and then say, is there an enhancement in the temperature of the Earth through extremely elaborate ways? Okay, half of the world's forests have been destroyed in past 50 years. And if humans stop deforestation today, which is continuing at a breakneck speed, and you will see the reason for that in a little while, the world's existing forests can sequester half the world's fossil fuel-based CO2. That doesn't mean we can keep spewing out CO2 continuously, but at least there's a glimmer of hope that the solution might be in forests, but recreating vanished forests and so on. But the tragedy is, for example, in Brazil, about 90% of Amazon is burnt out. What for? That is to create pastures, to create human habitations and so on. Just imagine the disaster that is waiting to unfold. Also, the trees' abilities to absorb carbon is diminishing because of such a high intensity of carbon. So what used to be a good tree could grab, let's say, 500 kilograms of carbon over a year, some 30 years back. Today, it can only do about 300. And that is another big cause of worry. Okay, so the climate risks and impacts, we are seeing it all around us. Millions of people affected by floods every year. Ocean acidification. It is predicted that after a while, the oceans will have less and less fish because of overfishing that we are doing. Then climate change threatening peatland systems, which is then 1,600 deaths due to heat waves and wildfires per year across the world. That number is increasing. And then a lot of displacement of people. This you can expect more and more. Right now, it's running about 1 million people per year displaced due to climate change. or droughts or floods or this or that. But over a period of time, you can look at it as 10 million, 20 million, and so on. Large swaths of humanity will have to move out. Middle East temperatures are expected to rise to 70 degrees centigrade in the not so distant future. And when that happens, you can just imagine what's going to be the plight. In India also, there's going to be rising of the ocean levels, by which coastal areas will be wiped out and some countries will go under, like Mauritius and so on. Then global ocean oxygen continues to decrease, which impacts the fish, and 2 million plus people displaced by weather and climate disasters, 821 malnourished children and people due to droughts. All these are man-made, and the sobering fact is we just have one planet. We don't have TK. In the cities, they have this fad. If I bought an apartment, for example, in Bangalore, they claim themselves to be Asia's or India's largest, tallest building, Mantri Pinnacle. And I asked the builder, hey, with so many apartments, all luxury, when you run dry of water, why I'm saying this is 40 years back, you could dig 20 feet in Bangalore, you will get copious groundwater. Today, you dig 3,000 feet, you will get nothing. So I said, you're going to suck a lot of water from the ground. What happens when we, suck it dry? He said, up, you can move off to somebody else, some other place, and sell this to somebody before that happens. So that's the lackadaisical attitude that we have towards this, that so long as it's not bothering us, mera din beet gaya, to hell with others. And that unfortunately is now going to haunt us, because there's nowhere to run now. Okay, so what is this 2 degree versus 1.5 degree centigrade? We already said 0.8 degree is done deal. You can't do much about it. And we are racing towards 1.5 or 2 degree. The difference between these is 1.5, at least there's a lower risk of food and water shortages, of a lower risk of economic growth, fewer species at risk of extinction, exposure to extreme heat is slightly lower, the lower threat of human health from air pollution, disease, malnutrition. Once you touch 2 degrees, it becomes an unstoppable thing. It will just keep rising on. It's predicted to go up to 4 degrees by the end of this century. And then everything will be threatened, including human life on Earth. So this is where the world is grappling. Everybody, all the politicians are making the right noises, but how many of them are acting is a very, very big question. The good thing is India is probably at the trailblazing, thanks to the current political dispensation, which has taken it very, very seriously. And at least it is being a role model. At 2 degrees, all warm water coral reefs would have been destroyed. Arctic sea ice would melt, and totally once in at least one summer in decade, which means it will be like any other ocean. And then nearby communities and wildlife threatened. Irreversible loss of ice sheets in Greenland, Antarctic. You must be seeing videos where millions of tons of ice or even billions of tons of ice are melting every day. And 1/3 of the population will be exposed to heat-related deaths. So this is not anymore a science fiction or some predictions of some armchair guy. It's happening and right in front of us. And to give you a magnitude of the problem, if this continues by 2026, there will be no wild vertebrates on Earth. What do I mean wild vertebrates? A giraffe that you find in Africa in some forest will all be gone. Elephants will be gone. All you can find them is in zoos. You go to a zoo if you have to look at, and that is a very, very big disaster, because you're meddling with the nature's cycles in a very big way. The only vertebrates will be around are cows, buffaloes, domesticated animals for meat and milk, and a few animals as specimens in the zoos. Okay, so to understand climate change, this is a holistic picture by a lady called Kate Raworth. 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist. If you're interested, please click on this slide and read that book. So think of it as a compass for human prosperity in the 21st century, with the aim of meeting all needs of all people within the means of the living planet. So far, we were really exploiting the planet like there's no tomorrow. But now the nature has pushed back and said, hey, dude, I'm in control, watch out. And COVID has given that sobering lesson. So there are some layers here you can see of social foundation, which is the inner layer, where every human being for a stable society has to have water, food, health, education, income and work, peace, justice, political voice, social equity, gender equality, housing networks, and energy. So this thing, if you are below that circle of social foundation, that means you're having a shortfall and the society will be on tenterhooks, just waiting for some small trigger to just get into a huge conflagration. And then there is an ecological ceiling, the outer circle. And if you exceed that, means you're kissing very close to what nature intended, and nature will push back. That's an overshoot that you see here. And that will result in things like climate change, ocean acidification, uh, chemical pollution, nitrogen and phosphorus loading, freshwater withdrawals. Many cities in India, you don't have fresh water anymore. And also the groundwater is getting depleted. Some of the big concern areas are places like Punjab and Haryana, which are supposed to be the granary of India. But sadly, what has happened is all these farmers, many of them have converted into rice for some strange reason, although they're not rice eating, because it's probably more lucrative or whatever. But rice needs a standing 3 to 4 inch of water, whereas something like millets or pulses need much less water. So they have been sucking their land so dry and also putting huge amount of chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers in the land that it's highly degraded. And there is a place, I believe, near Batinda, which is the cancer capital of the world. This may not be known to a lot of people, but the normal man can almost, the odds are very high that he will suffer with cancer. So then land conversion, that is from forest to uh, agriculture to housing. This is common in India. We have a lot of political patronage. You pay the right bribes and then they will convert any land into a use for habitats and so on, which is lucrative from a real estate perspective. Biodiversity loss, we talked about it. There's going to be only 4 or 5 species left on earth: dogs, and then some goats, chickens, and then cows and humans. That's it. All the others would have vanished. And that day is not far off. 2026 is when it is predicted that if we don't do something, you're going to see this start rolling out. Air pollution, we don't need to go far. Those of you who are from Delhi would know that air pollution for an average man on the street, forget about the rich people who put some, oxygen converters in the home, some air purifiers. Forget about them. But the common man who is Mazdoor, who is a bus driver, they apparently lose 9 years of their life simply by the existing level of air pollution in Delhi. 9 years of their life is shortened. If they would have lived till 80 normally, they die at 71. Ozone layer depletion and of course climate change. So this is as bad as it gets. And as you can see, building on the diagram we just saw, on the social foundation, there's a lot of shortfall, all red in terms of the percentage of populations across the world. Red means that there's a huge chunk of people who don't have political voice. There's a huge chunk of people who don't have housing or energy or water and so on. And then on the outside, which is your stretching your luck on the ecological ceiling, many boundaries have already been crossed. Biodiversity loss, land conversion, nitrogen and phosphorus loading, climate change. This means you're deep in the red zone. And then there are some gray zones: air pollution, freshwater withdrawals, chemicals, and so on, which is in a trouble spot actually. And it can get into red zone pretty soon. Ocean acidification, probably we have not yet measured the full impact. Ozone layer depletion, it was a big problem 2 decades back. Today, I think with a lot of regulation, they have corrected it to some extent. But anyway, it gives you a pretty bad scenario, both on pushing the boundaries of nature, that is the ecological ceiling, where you have 4 red marks and 3 or 2 gray marks. And on the social foundation, everything is in a mess. All the stuff that is shown on the inner circle, like food, health, and so on. Hey, Rohit, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, so I think we are 20 minutes into the conversation now.
Okay, so I'll finish in about 10 to 15 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the donut principles in practice, if you have to do it, you have to totally change the way that we, management schools have been teaching economics 101, management and so on. All this has to change. We have to embrace the 21st century goal of inclusiveness. See the big picture, not just you say, okay, I'm doing okay, but I don't care what happens. For example, a large auto company says we are very profitable. But the big picture is you're spewing out cars which are going to spew out a lot of noxious fumes for the rest of the life of that car, which may be 20 years, 15 years. So you need to see the big picture and not just, your own, I'm doing okay, to hell with the rest. Nurture the human nature. Think in systems perspective that's related to the big picture, and then be distributive. Don't try to grab everything yourself. This is about that equitable approach. Be regenerative, which means recycle, reuse, and so on. Aim to thrive rather than growth. Everybody is now recognizing how much can every company grow. Everybody, and in MBA, we have been told grow at any cost. Let's say TCAG, karenge growth. Every company has to grow 15-20% per year revenue. Otherwise, they'll get battered in the stock market. Kitne tak pahunch jayenge? If everybody is growing, you're going to just kiss the boundaries of the ecological boundaries big time, and you will be entering into deep red zone, which we already are. So somewhere we have to say, can we come up with alternate models of not just growth, but thriving rather than growing? What is the difference between the two is huge. Okay, there is something called the ESG framework, which I think we have already looked at it. Which is environmental, social, this is the equity and other part, and then the governance. Just to give you a small preamble of this, environmental will be renewable energy use. By the way, electric energy is not exactly renewable. If the source of electricity is from coal-fired plants, it can't be worse than, it's a very, very bad form of pollution. So long as electricity is from solar or wind or some such thing, it is renewable. Then waste management of air and water pollution from operations, deforestation, climate change mitigation strategies, social fair pay, retirement plans. We see a lot of people who have worked all their life, they don't have anything to fall back upon. And with the nuclear family, they've been kicked out of their homes by their children, and they're on the streets, and that's very, very common, or old age homes where they're left to fend for themselves. If you want to see where it is played out best, the widows of Mathura, just go and do a YouTube and you will find how many lakhs of widows are dumped there by children, saying that we are going on pilgrimage, mummy, and then bead baad mein chhod ke they run away. Perks and benefits, which are fair, diversity, inclusion, prevention of sexual harassment, employee training, education, flexible working hours, and COVID has shown the need for it. Employee engagement and turnover, relationship management with customers, company stance on human rights issues. That's where this, Uyghur Muslims and Motorola and Microsoft and some other companies, Nike, have been getting pushed back. That where are the human rights for that Xinjiang province in China? And then the governance is giving back to community, financial and accounting transparency, internal systems and controls, practices, procedures, complying with the law, meeting the needs of all external stakeholders. So from a management student perspective, these are all to-do agenda for each of you, and you don't have option, assuming that you are, even if you're not in a position to influence, you can raise the red flags in your organization and create awareness. Maybe you can start a club of employees to look at what can you do to contribute to the future of and well-being of humanity and planet Earth. So plastic pollution, the next topic I'm going to, this is very, very clear to you, each of you. There are enough of the seagulls and so on. And when they cut open those stomachs, they die. Suddenly you'll find some 1 lakh seagulls dead in some beach. And what happened when they cut open, they find 7, 8, 10 kilos of plastic, muck. So can you, after today, stop total plastic usage? It's a challenge for you, and I urge you to consider this seriously. That's in a first step towards trying to enhance our livability on this planet. Only we humans make waste that nature cannot digest. Nobody else. The cow, every part of its body is used, and otherwise it just gets assimilated in the soil. But we are masters at creating havoc that for the next 1 million years will be lying there. So that's the tragedy of our times. Growing consumerism is a very big bugbear. And of course, then we'll say, well, I'm learning marketing. How can Pizza Hut sell more? How can McDonald's sell more? So somewhere we have to ask ourselves, what the devil do we want to do with our lives? Do we want to just feed into that consumerist machine, or do something else more meaningful in our lives? So consumer class characterized by affluent lifestyles, 43% of manufactured plastic is for packaging. Households generate maximum plastic waste. You look at your own house, you can't buy anything. Even the students at IIMU, your Maggi noodles, immediately one plastic. Uske andar kuch seasoning hoga, uska bhi plastic. How much plastic are you going to generate? Then you drink Coke, or if you have some assignment, you drink that Big Bull or Red Bull, and then you throw some more junk. And if you see, actually, I'd urge some of your students to see track the waste that is happening in IIMU as a start. And you will find it's probably 15, about 150, 200 kilos at least, my guesstimate, per day. So what can you do to bring it down to zero? Good project for all of you. FMCG sector, which all of us are dying to join, biggest contributor to plastic pollution. Everything that they make is packed in plastic. 75% of consumer spending in 2030 would be driven by growing middle-class population. Highest plastic consumption in India is in packaging, agriculture, electronic goods. So if you have mobile phones, try to keep running them for as long as you can, rather than just new fashionable gizmo has come, because the e-waste is another very, very, very big polluter. So, and by the way, these companies have a very horrific way of making us buy. Samsung, the phone that I bought, it doesn't have a battery that you can access. So after 4-5 years, the chargeability goes down. You are forced to throw it. So can you find workarounds these things? Then annual per capita consumption of plastic in India is expected to get to 20 kilos in the next 2 years. Just imagine, into 1.4 billion people, whatever that adds up to, 28 billion kilos of plastic. Fast-paced consumer lifestyles leading to unsustainable consumption patterns. Okay, environmental footprint of plastic. 8 million tons of plastic waste enters the ocean every year. Staggering figures. Plastic garbage, a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Plastic incineration, releasing toxic gases, aggravating air pollution. Impact of plastic production on climate. It is equivalent to about 189 coal-fired large power stations working. By 2050, plastic production will triple from current levels and represent 13% of world's carbon budget. It accounts for 4 to 8% of global oil consumption. And of course, it's part of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda of United Nations 2030. Okay, this is the waste, use, throw, waste culture. Take materials and energy, take it, make it, use it, lose it, in the form of waste heat, waste matter. Whereas a circular economy, regenerative economy, renewable materials, take, make, consume, use, minimize lost matter, but regenerate and capture value at each stage of decomposition, restore, repair, reuse, refurbish, recycle. So my suggestion to you, if there's one major takeaway, folks, from this linear thing, to get into a circular mode for everything that you do. everything. If you have books, you don't have to buy books every time. You give it to the next batch. Can somebody start a club within your IIMU that past books are taken and given to the next batch? There's no shame in it. You're being kind to the environment. Try to avoid, minimize use of paper and so on. Okay, there are innovative things that you can do in B2C, business to consumer, refill at home, then return from home to somebody who picks it up, refill on the go. So you take some bottle like a plastic bottle, which is floor cleaning or laundry detergent, go to some place where you can fill it, but the same container is used. At least you are being kind in reducing plastic. Return on the go. So while you're moving around, drop off that, waste plastic bottles and so on at some place so that it can be recycled. In India, there is one company called Better Home, I think, which is adopting this, where nearly all your toilet cleaners, floor cleaners, laundry detergents, utensils cleaners, all of them are in this form that you can actually, they deliver the products, and then at the same time they pick up the used bottles, and that way they try to recycle. But this is just scratching the tip of the iceberg. There's incredibly more stuff to be done. Okay, all GHG emissions released by human-led activities must be counterbalanced by GHG removal from the atmosphere to reach net zero. What is GHG? Greenhouse gases. So if you are emitting something, bloody well, we make sure that there is some way to absorb it. So if you're building a house, put 50, 100 trees so that all the greenhouse gas you emit is absorbed by them. You may say, I don't have land. Go and find some patch of land where some NGO is doing tree plantation. Infosys Foundation does it in large thousands of acres and so on. So contribute to it, not just by money, signing a check, that's easy, but by Shramdan. Put solar, minimize use of power, put sensors in the room to detect motion so that if nobody is there, the power shuts off. So these are the 10 key solutions to mitigate GHG emissions. Phase out coal plants, that's a country level thing, and India and China are worse culprits in this. Then invest in clean energy and efficiency at every level, including your flat where you're staying. Retrofit buildings. We don't need, sealed windows. If you want to remove those steel windows, put a mesh for mosquitoes and open windows, because half the time during the year in India, you don't need ACs. But if you have sealed windows, then you're forced to put AC because you will get suffocated when there's a classroom and so on. Then decarbonize cement, steel, and plastic. These are the worst polluting industries. So there are some companies like Dalmia Cements, which are at the front of this. In Mahindra, there is one Mahindra Sanyo Steel or something, which is doing pretty good work. Shift to electric vehicles, but remember the source of power should be renewable. Increase public transport. Forget about all these silly things like status symbols. Get onto a bus, like your director Janat Shah, get onto a cycle. First, I think he was cycling 7, 8, 10 kilometers each way, although he was a director. Incredible. Or sell off your cars. Then one might say, what will happen to the economy? That let Mr. Narendra Modi take care. It's not your headache. Go on to cycle, you'll be fitter also. Go for walking. Decarbonize aviation and shipping. These are again very, very terrible polluters. Halt deforestation. Shout from the top of a rooftop or mountain to anything that is happening on deforestation. Raise your voice, create activism. Restore degraded lands, reduce food waste and loss, eat more plants and less meat. And this is good for your health. I myself converted into vegan, organic, and I've dropped 3 medicines I was taking, which were increasing in dose. My wife was taking 8 medicines, now down to 0. So it's just more plant-based food. This you can do very easily for your own good. Okay, there are many Indian companies that are trying to make it to the carbon disclosure project of the IPCC. There's something called the A list, where Hindustan Zinc, Indus Bank, and Mahindra and Tech Mahindra. But although while saying this, I want to say many companies are doing what is called whitewashing. which means they say they are doing it, but in reality, the truth is very, very far from it. So we have to be beware of that. Some companies have entered into A- list, Tata Steel, Godrej Consumer Products, JSW. The problem is there is very little supervision monitoring. So right now we are going based on what companies are self-declaring. What do green companies do? They set what is called science-based targets. There are different scope 1, 2, 3. One is what exactly happens within your manufacturing plant, like you have furnaces, furnace oil used. Scope 2 is basically the travel that your people do to come to work and so on. Scope 3 is your vendors, downstream and upstream supply chains. So their emissions. Switch to renewable energy for production processes, recover waste and reuse as raw materials, expand product lifespan, go plastic free, source locally, even for packing, see whether you can move into some plant-based packing materials. And there are enough polymers today which are not plastic, but give the same performance of plastic, which is prevent water entry and so on. Give back to community, plant more trees, reduce business travel, and employ commute to work. For example, at a personal level, choose a place which is close to your office and walk to work. Get a schooling close to your office. You don't have to send some 50 miles away to some fancy school. Abdul Kalam Saab was schooled in some very small time school in Rameshwaram. Engage employees in sustainability initiatives. So start a club on sustainability in whichever organization you work. Assist suppliers and customers in setting sustainability goals. This is what we call scope 3 emissions. So work with them. It's not enough if your house is clean on sustainability. Back upstream and downstream also work on it. Most importantly, take voluntary action because regulation is still very weak. So long as you're sort of complying with the loose laws of the land, nobody bothers you. But you have to go far, far beyond that. And that's where Mahindra and Mahindra is probably at the forefront of Indian corporates and probably among the top in the world, among large corporates. Okay, so there is no planet B. Allow me to have a future, little kid. And so all this muck has to stop sooner than later. The climate change crisis runs a lot deeper. And what is it? This is the one that I wanted to touch and spend a few minutes. Unfortunately, humanity over a period of last 40, 50, 60 years, maybe the developed world economic models pushed us to say that greed is good, selfishness is good. So long as I am doing well, it's okay. I don't care about what happens to the rest of the world. But as you know, if a butterfly flaps its wings in Amazon forest, it changes the world in a significant way. That is how interconnected we are. So there's a need to think, to move from selfishness to selflessness, greed to generosity, apathy to activism. And there's an American environmental lawyer and advocate whom I respect greatly, James Gustav Speth. We scientists don't know how to do that, how to move from selfishness to selflessness, greed to generosity, apathy to activism. I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, economic system collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. So my advice to you folks, spiritual is not something you have to be shy of. That's the only one that can expand your consciousness to encompass the whole world. So the sooner you get onto a spiritual transformation of yourself and also get back to some of the strong anchors of cultures. Indian culture is so bloody strong, but thanks to the Mughal rule and the British rule, we've been made to feel ashamed of our own culture. But I'm, with all the authority I can command, I can say that the Indian culture is something has phenomenal strength in terms of coexisting peacefully with other humans, with animals, with other living species, with the planet, with the nature, and so on. So, to the extent possible, move in that direction and definitely have strong spiritual anchoring. Without that, you're not going to make any progress in life. Okay, There are two industrial machines of doom. One is the burning machine, burning fossil fuels, but the other one is what is called the killing machine, which is animal agriculture. Sorry. So, unfortunately, the entire climate change debate is all about the burning machine. It's very silent on the killing machine. Think about what the cow does. It eats from morning, from the time it wakes up till the time it sleeps. It only goes on eating. And goats and sheep, they even eat, pluck out the roots of the grass and so on. And to feed these animals, increasingly you have to clear forests. And we are seeing that across the world. Some of the forest fires that are there are by the animal agriculture mafia, man-made. And every cow, we all know that cows and buffaloes and bulls, in their excreta, they have, this is used for gobar gas. So that methane should be within its system. And when it belches, it creates massive amount of methane pollution, which is much, much worse than carbon dioxide pollution. But this is not talked about because there is a conspiracy of silence between 4 or 5 industries. The pharma industry wants to sell more medicine, and that they can do only by making you sick. The food industry, which wants you to eat the wrong food so that you depend on medicine. Then there is the hospital, healthcare industry, which wants you to come into the hospitals so that they can treat you and make their profits. And then there is the regulation and regulatory bodies who get sponsorship from all these industries through lobbying and so on, which actually totally skew and warp what is communicated to the world. And there are enough cases now, because of the awareness thanks to social media, of people taking 80 tablets a day and not able to move, and that 80 will go to 90 in 2 years. And one fine day, when the person changed their eating habits and became a vegan and an organic vegan, the same person within about 2 years is actually running around the park. Somebody who was obese with about 150 kilos of weight is looking like a young bride or bridegroom. That's the type of transformation that's possible. But there is a conspiracy of silence among many industries that want you to eat processed food, which is filled with chemicals. So one of the things you can swear to yourselves after today is stop any form of processed food. Anything that touches a factory, avoid. The false axiom of consumerism, the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying never-ending series of latent desires. The greed is good rule. This is by a great climate activist called Dr. Sailesh Rao, very successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur in US, made probably $1 billion by serial entrepreneurship, and then realized that this is going to get nowhere. So he closed all that and jumped into climate activism. And you might want to look him up on the YouTube. There's enough and more talks about him. So the advertising culture, the consumer culture, which we MBAs are all prone to, in our lives, propagate, has to reverse and create advertisements and consumer movements in the right direction. False axiom of supremacism. Life is a competitive game, and all of us at MBA are used to this, in which those who have gained an advantage, they may possess, enslave and exploit animals, nature, and disadvantage for the pursuit of happiness. The might is right rule. This is again a tragedy. So the slavery, the warped, twisted caste system in India, and then enslaving animals. The animals live in inhuman conditions. A cow, so we are proud about India being the largest dairy industry in the world. But at the same time, it comes with tremendous grief to the animals. They are cooped in small places. In the Western world, it is worse. They have that milk-sucking machines attached to their udders 24/7. They can barely move. And then one pregnancy is over, they start yielding milk. And when it is drying up, a second forced pregnancy till the age of 15, after which the cow can't create kids anymore. And then it is promptly sent to the slaughterhouse. This is India for you, Mera Bharat Mahan. And all the meat is either consumed inside. We are also one of the largest beef exporters in the world. Nothing to be proud of. Okay, so false axiom of, there were many false axioms in the past, but they were overturned. The sun goes around the earth. Copernicus overturned it. Black-brown people were put on earth for white people to enslave. The Civil War movements and then the ongoing civil rights and so on. Women were put on earth for men to possess. The feminist movement. Happiness can be attained by fulfilling series of desires. The spiritual movement, and India showed the beacon for that. Animals and nature were put on earth for humans to possess and exploit, the ongoing vegan movement. So there is hope, friends. Let us not have just a bleak picture, but you have to be the torchbearer to herald a new future. So the engineering solution to climate change: shut down the killing machine as soon as possible. So no more animal agriculture, period. The forests will regenerate themselves, the methane pollution will end, and then people's lives and quality of health will be much, much, much better. Power down the burning machine progressively over the next 9 or 10 years. But unfortunately, a lot of the dialogue is only about the burning machine. For reasons we said, there's a huge amount of vested interest to keep the killing machine going. So I think, so making sustainability personal, what does it mean to each of you? Repair, reuse items that you have till you no longer can. Less meat, more plant food. Segregate waste at home, food waste, recyclable waste, biodegradable waste. Turn off lights and fans when not in use. It's a habit. You go into the house, and those who can afford put on ACs. Bloody well, the body doesn't need AC. You are not born with an AC. You're not going to die with one. Organize community cleanups and plantation drives. I know of a friend in Sringeri, a temple town in Karnataka. He just went around Sringeri. Many of you would not have heard of it. He went around the town, part of the town, and collected something like 300 kilos of plastic, and then sensitized them, the people, that let's stop this. Don't leave the tap on unnecessarily while brushing and so on. Be sensitive that every drop that you are wasting is drop denied to somebody else for water. And next wars are going to be fought on water. Source food locally. Don't go for these exotic foods. It has to be imported. Kobe beef and all that bullshit. Just whatever is locally available to minimize the carbon footprint. Say no to fast fashion and also to fast food, because it's highly dangerous to your body. Buy less, conserve more. Educate your friends and family. And whatever money you save, use it for good causes like NGOs and so on. Educate your friends and family on whatever lessons you are learning. Create some blogs and such things. Use social media to raise your voice against environmental and social injustice. Okay, that's it. You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Jane Goodall is one of the foremost environmentalists. She's from the Western world, but spent all her life in Africa and is known as a chimpanzee woman. She spent her life trying to conserve chimpanzees, which were getting hunted down. And she could actually speak to chimpanzees. So, incredible lady and environmentalist. So, among the top environmentalists in the world. She's, I believe, no more. May have recently died. Okay, that's where I stop, and now I'll hand over back to our friend. We can take about 20 minutes interaction. Sorry for spillover by a few minutes.
Sure, sure. So I want to share a few personal anecdotes on this topic, if you think that is right.
Yeah.
Sure. So my journey with sustainability started almost a year back when my son was born. I announced it after 3 months to a lot of my friends, and one of my friends asked me, Rohit, to be honest, congratulations to you, but let me tell you, I don't want to have kids. I don't want kids. And I asked why is that perspective, and he told me that I'm not sure what kind of environment or what kind of climate we are leaving for our next generation to be in. And if you look at, right, I think it is going to get worse even the survival to and reaching the age of 50 probably would get difficult for our kids. It is possible, right? And that's where I started learning more about sustainability and what kind of impact it is having. And I think recently, a couple of months back, we have got this IPCC report, right? So IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and their report is unequivocal. They have said it is indeed late, and we are facing certain irreversible challenges. They have predicted that by the end of next 2 decades, so by 2040, world will see a rise of 1.5 degrees centigrade in temperature. And if it is not curtailed, it is going to have catastrophic effects. So this is how time critical it is for us. And they have also predicted that if we go by the speed we are going, by the end of the century, 2100, Earth will get warmer by 4.4 degrees centigrade. And that will probably have most of the climate effects come into picture. And I think we on the business side, if you see, right, so we have a CEO of BlackRock, right, Mr. Larry Fink, who have sent a note, sent an email, open letter to all the CEOs of his investee firms, right, that we need to avoid as a group, as a business, we need to avoid short-termism and emphasize that climate risk is an investment risk and transition to a net zero is inevitable. So we have to start thinking about that now and move from the theory of shareholder return to a stakeholder returns, where when I say stakeholder, it's not just the people who have invested money in the company, but also the people who are in the community that they belong, or the government, the competitor, everybody, right? The employees of the company. So we have to think about and move to a shareholder value that will help. So thank you so much, sir. There are a couple of questions that are there, and I wanted to ask you. So Meghna has asked, in Germany and in European countries specifically, right? I think they are far ahead of all other countries when it comes to sustainability and defining ESG. So people say that people can pay a little extra money per plastic bottle, and then they can get this money back when they return the used bottles in the supermarket. It's a good way to promote sustainability and systemize recycling. Right? So what's your opinion or as to feasibility in India of these kind of solutions? I don't think this is happening yet, or it might be happening in bits and pieces. So any view on this?
No, my view on these things is unequivocal. It has to start by companies, conscientious leaders at the top, or conscientious customers, or by regulation. And the sooner we do it, the better. There's no question. If it means that when I buy some Bisleri bottle, if there is a tax of 2 rupees or 5 rupees for that, and that money will be given back to me when I return the bottle in some way at some place. And today electronic payments and all that make it very seamless and possible. So there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs to sort of get into these type of things. And you people are all young, creative minds. So you have to actually take charge. Forget about the old generation like mine. We have messed up enough the planet. So you guys have to take charge, like Rohit has said, that he's woken up to this reality because of friends suggesting that the planet will be screwed up by the time his kids come to some age. Okay, so there's no option but to do it. It may look currently infeasible, but entrepreneurship is all about making the impossible happen.
Absolutely, sir. So I think a few things that we all can do is probably, I have stopped using bicycles or my scooty or a scooter to do all the household chores, right? So if I have to move around 4 or 5 kilometers within the city to get my household chores done, I have started using bicycle since last 4 months. So I'm only riding bicycle to get all those things done. I've also stopped using plastic bottles. So whenever I leave my home, I make sure that I have a water bottle of myself, so that I don't buy all those water bottles and along the way and then throw it away. So very few things that probably all can do. So and yes, I think sustainability has been, now there are a few imperatives which have come up for sustainability. I think number one is the purpose-driven consumer, right? Consumer are asking, and we all are consumer. We all have to wake up and ensure that the brands aligned to sustainability principles. That is very important, and we can make that change happen. Another piece is coming from active investors, right? They are forcing organizations to make sustainability as part of their business strategy. Then there are regulatory and compliance. Of course, we have Paris Accord, and then there are individual regulations that have come up with within specific countries. India is also going to have BR and BS, which is business responsibility and sustainability reporting, which will get mandated probably by 2022 or 2023 for all the companies who are listed in NSE or BSE. So government is doing their bit, but at the end of it, we all have to drive this. So sir, there is one last question that I wanted to
No,
take.
I'd like to say one thing on this. Basically, see, as a industry captains, which all of you would be moving to, at least you'll have voice in your companies, maybe 5 years after passing out of IIM, if not sooner. One is to proactively position yourself as a role model, as a company, as an individual, as a department, in this whole ecological crisis that is staring at us. And the other is reactively by the government. One fine day, they'll get so desperate that they'll pass draconian rules and say, if you don't do it, you're dead. So this is the choice. So the sooner you wake up to the reality that this is not some pipe dream that some doomsday people are talking about, but something which is here and now, not in the distant future, the better it is for you, your company, and everybody. Your last question, please.
Sure, sir. I think finally, I want one last question would be that I think Shyam is asking this question that COVID-19 made companies realize that the carbon footprint can be saved. A lot of carbon footprint can be saved from working from home and not transporting to work locations, right? But now, as we move 18 months down the line, we have all these vaccinations and everything done. Now, companies again started asking employees to come back to offices. And it can be the multiple reasons for that. So how do you think that evolving, how as an employee we can stop that from happening? Is there any way we can create an impact and say, why don't we continue working from home? If it is, at least if for example, in functions like HR or admin or sales, right, which is not necessarily required to travel every now and then.
Let me just say that COVID has shown the way that it is possible to learn remotely, something which was unthinkable 2 years back. You yourself at IIM, you had, I think, 1 year at least of digital classrooms, and so also schools and so on. And also it has been demonstrated that large mega companies like TCS can have their employees essentially sit in their homes and work with equal efficacy, probably more. There's a lot of research done on these. Somebody is contesting, saying actually productivity is less. Somebody says, well, I'm actually working 24/7. All of you have experienced it. Also, many people have gone back to their hometowns rather than hang around in mega cities like Bangalore during this process. And they have found the beauty of working from remote locations with simple infrastructure like internet gear. They've been able to be very, very productive while attending to their farms and so on. So I think there is generally an appreciation that we have gone far too away from a natural way of living. And there is a very, very severe thinking on the part of those who like to use their brains to say that there are better ways. I think exemplar companies have been showing that, and even companies like TCS have declared that they don't see more than 50% of their workforce coming to work on any given day in the long haul. And there are many, many attendant benefits because you reduce the real estate costs, this, that, and the other. Of course, homes have to be redesigned to create noise-free, especially in small homes like in Bombay, where do you have the luxury? And that has been the complaint of some of the students and workforce to say, how do we get quiet places to work? But all that will happen. There might be a time lag. Architects will come up with some nice, elegant designs where maybe 5 feet by 10 feet soundproof room where you don't feel suffocated. You can work in peace without the children or grandmother or somebody shouting or yelling. So all those will happen. COVID has shown a lot is possible. Back to the push from urbanization to reverse of urbanization, the push from classroom learning to remote learning. and then working from an office. So even in ISB right now, with the rules relaxed for the foreseeable future of many years, it's now that employees are expected to come only 2 days per week to work. Rest of the time they work from home. And if a certain manager of a department says, I don't need my people to come to office, they can work from home. That's also fine. Because otherwise there is also a lot of attrition. I've in my own department lost my star performer because she's got a 4-year-old child and she says, even those 2 days I can't come. So to that extent, there is a lot of pushback. People are used to it. It's all about quality of life issues. How do I balance both? It can't be one extreme that at work from home means somebody is chilling off all the time. So what sort of monitoring systems are there to see that they deliver? And work from home doesn't mean that the boss can call at 2 o'clock in the night and say, यार गधे क्या कर रहे थे? मैंने मेल भेजा 11 बजे अब तक reply नहीं आया. So somewhere this balancing, but I think humanity as such, I would like to give credit to the fact that they are ingenious and they will find now that a direction has been shown. These are irreversible trends. Exemplar companies like Google have already announced that there's no need for employees to come to work ever, or large sections of them for particular functions. So on this note, we can end. I'd like to compliment Ahana, who is here, Ahana Mahanti. I don't know if she can speak. Can they unmute and speak? And Sanjana, these are the two people at our ISB Center for Business Markets who are doing extraordinary research in climate change. They work closely with me and several others. Sanjana and Ahana, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And
I guess they can speak up. I have allowed them to speak. Sanjana, Ahana, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
Can we see their videos, you think? But yeah, they're both heading for top school PhDs in climate change, maybe in the Nordic countries in the very near future. So, and they've been relentless, doing about 16 hours a day on climate change for the last 1 year. So this presentation was put together by them. So kudos to you. Hey, you both, could you just speak for 2 minutes each?
Hello, Professor. Hi, Rohit. Great session here. I'd just like to say that while pursuing this research, it's mostly around corporate climate action. I'd like to say that I learned a lot, and I have started making those personal changes myself. We talk a lot about tree plantation drives, and I used to think that's a very feasible solution. But apparently, if you get to understanding climate science more, apparently, digging trenches to plant more trees is not going to solve the problem, because trees have a very, if you forcefully plant so many trees, they have a mortality rate of 85%. And, it's just best to leave these lands alone, just stop deforestation altogether and harness nature, let nature do its job. And yes, I think India is doing a lot. We have to give India some credit, but I'm afraid it's not enough. And another thing I also wanted to say about this concept of circular economy, what we can do personally is that a lot of these apps have come out, right, where you can just arrange for a waste pickup service. And, I donated a lot of plastic myself, which goes into recycling. Stop buying more plastic. That's it. Just stop. You don't need a lot of these things. I understand when you're exposed to so many things on social media, I understand the desire for it, but you really don't need all of this. So the least you can do is the things you don't need, you donate them, put them into recycling drives and so on. Just some small changes, which I also started doing as I got more informed. Thanks to Professor.
Thanks, Ahana. And Sanjana?
Yeah, thank you, Professor. It was a great session. And I guess I'll just add to what Ahana said. This field is so vast that when you get into it, you realize that there's no single solution or no single way that the problem can be addressed. And, whether it is about your choices in eating, whether it's meat or whether it's, plastic waste or sustainable clothing or anything of that sort, I think these are all choices that people need to make very gradually about how they buy and consume things, because there is frankly no one size fits all solution for how these different problems that he covered in this 40-minute talk can be addressed. So the change completely begins with each one of us individually. So I'll just leave you with that thought. And I think once you take interest in this subject per se, you realize that there are many different ways that you can contribute and bring about lifestyle changes. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sanjana.
Okay, both of them are publishing at a furious pace, and much of the work of our center is their work. Thank you. And by the way, I also recognize several names on the attendee list. So thank you for being here. One young girl who I can see is Jui Chaure, who's a dear friend, Sunil Chaure's daughter in Mumbai. He's a big daddy in Mahindra, now shifted to Chennai. So anyway, many other names I realize, but without delaying the closure, I'll hand over back to Rohit. The best thing you guys can do is, all of you, from this moment, may do major lifestyle changes. Rohit can share this PPT with all of you, because this is no intellectual property, it's collective survival of humanity. Also, if you are in companies that are, hugely profligate in terms of waste and so on, you can either try to convince them to implement these principles, or if not, bail out. The world is wide. You work with companies that are having their heart in the right place. It's very, very important. You cannot have a dichotomy between what you believe at a personal level and the type of work you're doing. So who will sell more FMCG products or more plastic? That somebody else will take care. You don't worry. Be in a place which is essentially conscientious about climate change. And wherever you're living, like in a society of apartments or whatever it is, create awareness. It doesn't take a lot of effort. With IIM training can help you to do that. Okay, cheers. God bless you for wonderful lives, and be climate ambassadors for the whole world.
Thank you so much, sir. And I want to thank you, Ahana, Sanjana, Ruchi, our alumni officer, all the participants and Alumni Association of IIM Udaipur for joining us today, making this session happen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd like to especially thank Ruchi. She's been persistent. I told her, yaar, chodo abhi. I'm in my retirement phase. So mujhe kyun pareshan karte ho? But she kept eating my brain. I think persistence is sometimes beneficial. So thank you. It gave me an opportunity to do a second homecoming. So maybe we should have Ruchi say a word or two.
Yeah, Ruchi, I am allowing you to talk. Can you unmute yourself?
Ruchi, unless you're making some Ruchi food.
I'll come and then we can have a bhakri again. That's not a big deal.
Okay, cool.
No, but thank you for accepting the invite.
My pleasure.
Yeah. You were saying something. I just.
No, that's it. And Roshni has shown her face on the screen. Anything to say? Okay, without further ado, let's bring this session to a close. Thanks one and all. Bye-bye. God bless.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend ahead.